Sounil. Great to have you here in Israel for Cybertech, and congratulations on your new book, Cyber Defense Metrics.
Thanks.
Waiting for it for a while already. So I wanted to ask you, kind of kick it off to kind of hear your perspective. I think that when we're looking kind of at the agenda in Cybertech and we're looking at the attacks over the past few years, we're seeing a lot of supply chain related risks and third-party risks that are related to vendors that have access to organizations' critical applications and resources, and it kind of influences a lot of aspects within the cybersecurity world. And I'm interested to hear kind of your perspective, how it influenced your thought about cyber defense metrics and how it kind of shifted over the past 2 years. The fact that I think like at least 80% of the attacks, or the well-known attacks, were focused on kind of that supply chain element.
Sure. Yeah. So when I created the cyber defense matrix, the goal was to be able to map a whole bunch of enterprise security capabilities into the matrix. What I discovered pretty quickly was there were a couple things that I couldn't seem to fit easily, and third parties, supply chain, those sort of things seem to not fit so tightly within the matrix. So what I discovered was I needed to be able to characterize assets owned by other people. So the enterprise security matrix, or the enterprise security version of the matrix, is enterprise-owned devices, applications, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to supply chain, these aren't enterprise-owned applications, but rather vendor-owned applications, or third-party owned applications. What I needed to do is to basically characterize another layer of the matrix, and that additional layer really is what does it look like when it comes to how I secure the supply chain. And usually the very first thing that we want to do in any activity is the function of identify. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is just understand who are my suppliers? Can I inventory my suppliers? And then also understand the relationships I have among those suppliers. And when it comes to supply chain, the problem's accelerating because we're using more and more SaaS applications. We have a lot more dependencies on third parties, whether that's for code or for just the day-to-day business workflows that we have.
Yeah, and I think that today we're seeing also the decentralization of IT, and more functions within the organization can really influence on how that risk surface looks when it comes to supply chain. And I think you came up with the term PIDA of plugins, integrations, and third-party apps, and the fact that basically today you have so many of these different integrations that kind of plug into the core business applications. And how do you see really kind of organizations need to address these types of risks when they need to think about it from the matrix perspective, and think about kind of how it fits within their ongoing infrastructure, procedures, and processes within the company?
So the problem that you mentioned, PIDA, which was a term that I thought was pretty funny to come up with, plugins, integrations, third-party apps, really adds to the complexity of the challenge that we have. It's not just the applications that we use, but all the other things that hook into it.
Right.
And now I've extended my attack surface. So my initial attack surface was just the SaaS application I'm using. Right. Now I've added all these other things that really have expanded that attack surface. And really the challenge is going to be, it's not a simple, I can't fix this problem easily. It's actually, I don't think, a problem to be solved, but a problem to be managed. Mm-hmm. And what I need to be able to do is just have visibility into all those different PIDA, plugins, integrations, third-party apps, to understand what data is going back and forth amongst those, and then ultimately make good decisions, to be able to have this available to me so I can make good decisions around what will I continue to allow, and what can I do to safeguard myself? Because I really honestly cannot necessarily trust all these other third-party apps, but at the same time, I can't necessarily stop the business from using those. So there are steps I'm going to have to take to safeguard the type of information that we send to them, and the kind of controls that I can put forth to say, given the nature of what we're sharing, or given the nature of some of these entities, maybe we can change the type of data we send, or minimize the data that we send, or do other things that give me more control over my own environment.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that was very interesting for us when we kind of were in the ideation of starting Valence and we chatted about it, and I think that one of the things you mentioned is the lack of the continuous assessment, because today when you think about kind of third-party risk management processes, a lot of them are kind of point-in-time assessments when you onboard that vendor and you try to understand whether or not what's the business justification, what is the potential risk. But I would say business needs and business integrations and business activities change over time, and in many cases you both lack the kind of the continuous assessment of what's the risk that that vendor is imposing on the organization, and also what's that business need, and how do you kind of tie that together to continuously ensure that you have kind of that proper zero trust in place to make sure that you don't really expose more than it's necessary for that business. That's kind of a critical aspect of that missing piece in today's kind of supply chain risk management, and making sure that it's not only a point in time activity, but also something that is ongoing and continuously and all the time is associated with the business activities. And how do you see kind of organizations today being able to handle it, that type of decentralization of IT? In fact, that today you have so many different moving parts within the organization that have needs that you can't really stop. You need to help enable them and manage that risk.
Right. I think the environment is so dynamic. It's dynamic because the number of applications that are available are constantly growing. And we want to spur that sort of innovation. I want, for example, the marketing team to find the latest cool application to help improve business in some way. I want the sales team to be able to try different things. So anytime that I restrict that, really it encumbers the business and their ability to grow. The space of SaaS applications just, again, it's exploding, and that's something that's not going to change. Furthermore, it's exploding in a way that requires constant, continuous monitoring of that environment, because new features get added, new plugins, integrations, third-party apps gets added, and it's not necessarily being added from a centralized view. It's added by the users. They see some value in integrating some Slack app, and all of a sudden now you have this additional exposure. Right. But that's all really for the purposes of spurring growth and competitiveness, and to be able to grow the company and the business that you have. So again, I don't necessarily want to stop that as much as I want to be able to have guardrails and be able to manage that risk that's associated with it. The challenge really that we have is just that we don't have really great tools to keep a close eye on that. And that's really where I think you guys are trying to solve that problem.
Yeah, and I think that kind of also leads to another point that we're seeing today within the industry, that I think is IT and security is so outnumbered by the business and the pace of the business. And I think that another big theme that we're seeing today within organizations, within the Cybertech especially as well, is the automation and the need to kind of help automate processes and procedures and workflows in order to kind of be able to address there's so many different security concerns and needs that exist across the enterprise without having to increase the security personnel or the headcount by too many, because that's also another challenge, the kind of talent gap and being able to hire more and more security professionals. And one of the things that we're seeing is also to try to kind of leverage the fact that we have so many different moving pieces within the organization, and to move back to the business units themselves. So let's say, for example, to that marketing person, to make sure that they can also understand and manage their own risk that is associated to their day-to-day business by providing automation for this type of policy enforcement and communication between the security team and eventually the business unit and the end user.
Yeah, I think to a large degree, a lot of the exposure that we have is due to neglect, and people not necessarily even being aware that they've left this exposure in our environment. As I mentioned, I don't want to dissuade or discourage the marketing team or the sales team or anybody on the team from exploring new things, but I do want to let them be cognizant of anything that they've tried in the past that they just haven't gone back to. Right? So if they haven't used a particular SaaS application in months because they tried it out, let's get rid of that. Let's clean that up. And that's really not just security's job. That's really our collective job. It's like cleaning the dishes, or it's picking up trash around the house. It's all our collective responsibility. And what we need tools to help us do is just keep mindful of those things where it could easily be cleaned up by any one of us. And security may be the one that buys the dishwasher or the tools to help you do that. But really, it's a collective job for us to all keep track of. And so anything that also helps push that responsibility down, or assign that responsibility to those who, use that dish or drop that napkin, that all the better. Because I think we all understand we want to keep our place clean. And if there is something that we used once and don't really need anymore, let's clean that up so that it doesn't create an exposure for us.
Yeah, that kind of joint effort that everybody pitches in.
Yeah, it's a partnership, and we all want to work together on that.
Cool. So thanks, Sounil, for kind of chatting with us, and looking forward to read that book.
Yeah, thanks. Hope you enjoy it.
Thanks.